All right, it's that time, people. Time to get into the stories and the news making the rounds in the dailies across Nigeria. This is the first freshly pressed in the month of May 2025. It is 31 minutes past 7 a.m. You are most welcome to the smooth side of life. This is Smooth 98.1, the smooth breakfast with yours truly. My name is Ayokunmi. Great to have you this Thursday morning, a holiday Thursday morning, but nevertheless, the wheels never stop rolling on the bus. The news never stops, and we keep bringing it to you hot and fresh every single day. Joining me to take a look at said stories and give the analysis as well, give us some explanation, make some sense of it all. Joining me on a Thursday morning in the comfort of their homes as a holiday, and I'm in the studio. Mr. C and me are with me on this one. Good morning to you, gentlemen. I'm not jealous. We're good to have you on the show.
Good morning, Ayo. Good morning, Mr. C. Yes, it's a very comfortable May 1st today. Happy Workers' Day, everyone.
Good morning, Nayo. Good morning, Gbubemi. Good morning, Lagos. Happy Workers' Day to all the workers everywhere.
Yes, indeed. Happy Workers' Day to all the workers everywhere. Even though things might not be all honky dory and everything, but we'll make the best of it. We'll be talking labor issues as well as we get into the stories. But before we do that, let me just let you know how you can be part of the discussion this morning. You can send your messages in to us on WhatsApp. The number is 0809 444 0981. 0809 444 That is the WhatsApp number. We're also on YouTube. You can join the live stream at Smooth 981 FM Lagos. Smooth 981 FM Lagos. You can leave your comments in the chat box, and I definitely will be taking them alongside the WhatsApp messages as they come in. All right, Mr. C, let's begin this journey in The Guardian. And the Court of Appeal sitting in Calabar on Wednesday upheld the conviction of Peter Ogban, a professor jailed in 2021 for rigging a senatorial election for Godswill Akpabio, who is the Senate president, senator from Akwa Ibom State. Now, Akpabio, a member of the ruling All Progressives Congress, the APC, is the president of the Nigerian Senate, as I just mentioned. Now, the rigging happened in an election he lost before he contested again in 2023, won the election, and was elected as the Senate president. Now, Ogban, who's a professor of soil science at the University of Calabar and a returning officer in the 2019 general elections in Akwa Ibom Northwest District, was jailed for 3 years by a state high court in Uyo for announcing fake election results in two local government areas, Oruk Anam and Etim Ekpo, in Akpabio's favor. Well, Mr. C, that particular conviction has been upheld. And what does this say generally about Nigerian politics? And is there any, how would I say this? Is there any um, respite at the end of the day? I mean, bearing in mind the individual who the election was, rigged in his favor is now the Senate president, albeit in a different election entirely. But what does that say generally?
It doesn't portend good news, Ayo. And this is the reason why I've consistently maintained over the years that Nigeria's electoral process is flawed, from the way it's conducted to the way results are collated to the way petitions are even prosecuted. Everything is flawed. Now, here's the absurdity, another example of the absurdity that Nigeria is sadly today. When I say Nigeria is a joke, people who do not have the ability to comprehend properly come at me. How do you explain this? A collation officer was found guilty of falsifying results in favor of a particular candidate. This is the finding of a court, not of Mr. C. He was appropriately found guilty and sentenced. He then filed an appeal to the Court of Appeal, and that appeal was rejected and dismissed. Now, the agent who performed the wonders is punished, but the so-called or presumed beneficiary is left untouched. What then are we doing? Look at the elections that were conducted in 2023. INEC could not bring certified the actual original sheets used for those elections to the tribunal. So again, what are we doing? How do we engender faith and trust in our electoral process? I would suggest a number of things. Number one, where any candidate is determined or established to have benefited from any sort of fraud or malpractice, either at the election stage or at the collation stage, that candidate, in addition to the individual or set of individuals directly responsible, should face a ban from politics for 10 years. Then, with regards to the elections proper, it is the duty of INEC, it should be the duty of INEC to confirm to the courts and the world whether they conducted the elections in accordance with the provisions of the Electoral Act. It should not be the duty of the loser or the complainant, as the case may be. Now, where are we going with this? Even if he appeals again and the appeal is unsuccessful, we have missed a critical point in making a key statement that electoral fraud in whatever form, manner, or guise will not be tolerated. But again, here we are. He's not the only university professor to be found guilty. Another one was also found guilty in the same Uyo state. But the bigger question is, the beneficiaries of this fraud continue to go untouched and unpunished. And maybe the political parties too should be added to the mix. Where they are found to have benefited from such illegal acts, they will be restrained or restricted from presenting candidates for that particular seat, say for 10 years or for 2 election cycles. Maybe then and only then will we start to behave ourselves.
Right, Mr. C. But, in this particular case, the elections in question 2019, Senator Akpabio actually lost that election. So, assuming that he had won in that instance, I mean, what punishment would actually have happened? And in the case that he actually did not win, what punishment, or should I say, what actually should be done to extend the punishment to him? Not just the professor in question, but the person who was supposed to be the beneficiary.
Okay, so to answer your question, assuming he had won and then this verdict came out, he must be made to resign immediately. He must step down from the office immediately because the vehicle that took him into that seat has been declared bad. Now, assuming he did not win, nevertheless, assuming we had serious regulations in place that were being enforced, he should have started a ban, a 10-year ban or a 2-election cycle ban, because we cannot say because it didn't succeed, no problem. Why do we have criminal offenses of attempted armed robbery, attempted burglary? We're not saying, okay, because you didn't succeed, go home and sin no more. The fact is you attempted a criminal offense and you must be punished accordingly.
So looking at that, I mean, bearing in mind the fact that the person was jailed in 2021, that means that Akpabio should not have been eligible to actually run for elections in 2023.
He should not. And then don't forget, even his 2023 nomination is shrouded in mystery, controversy, and all sorts of shenanigans. Yeah. So it's a consistent thing. It appears to be a consistent thing with him.
And here we are. Anyways, let's keep this ball rolling. Let's step into the punch. Like I mentioned earlier, we will be talking about some Labor Day matters, and I'm going to talk about the NLC and the TUC here. This is going to be a bit hilarious, but stay with me on this one. Now, state chapters of the Nigeria Labour Congress and the Trade Union Congress have decried the condition of the Nigerian worker and called for the urgent review of the 70,000 naira minimum wage as the country celebrates the 2025 May Day, that is today. Now, this comes just as Senate President Godswill Akpabio said the legislative and executive arms of government would not shirk their responsibility to work together to address workers' concerns and to create opportunities for growth and prosperity. However, organized labor leaders across the country said workers were worse off since the emergence of President Bola Tinubu, despite his assurances that he would not only pay the workers a minimum wage, but a living wage as well. If memory serves me correctly, these same labor leaders, broke into song and dance upon the agreement of the 70,000 naira as the minimum wage. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I mean, do they have a leg to stand on to begin to lament the issues? They knew back then.
Exactly. So one thing that a lot of people have agreed is, or one thing that a lot of people, say, the perception is that, to be honest, the Labour leaders have lost the moral rights to be able to advocate for people in terms of Labour matters. If we recall, there had been a long back and forth that went into the negotiations and discussions for the minimum wage, the new minimum wage, which was eventually signed into law July last year. Prior to that, a lot of figures had been bandied around as to what Labour was pushing for. I think at some point we had heard 300,000, 600,000, various figures. And some had said, oh, these figures are ridiculous, blah, blah, blah. Some things had also flown around, as to how Labour had arrived at some of the figures that they were proposing. But eventually, anyway, 70,000 was what was negotiated and agreed by the federal government and the Labour representatives, and then it was signed into law in July 2024. And if I recall quite correctly, shortly around that period, either shortly before, shortly after, petrol prices went up significantly. And Labour came out, started saying, oh, they didn't know, there had been an agreement, petrol prices won't go up, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, federal government itself didn't even start paying that minimum wage until September, which was about 2 months after it was signed in. And as we speak, at least 20 states have not even started paying that minimum wage. Some states are even alleged to have just added about 5,000 to the old minimum wage, which was 30,000. So you can imagine the official minimum wage is 70,000, and some states are just paying 35,000. Some states haven't even implemented any changes at all. It's clear to anyone really, that even at that 70,000, it was a misfire. Compared with what people were spending on things like the petrol, things like transportation, feeding, and all of that, 70,000 was not even enough. I know arguments had been made as to the capacity of the Labour leaders to even enter a negotiation. Some people had even suggested that maybe they should have hired a professional negotiator to push for their points, if they're not experienced in negotiating. So for them to come out now and start decrying, 70,000, blah, 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 for me, is sort of laughable, because I'm like, we're right back where we were last year before you went on these negotiations. And you knew at that time that 70,000 was not enough. Now, things are a lot worse than they were last year when 70,000 was agreed, and you're coming out to say all sorts of things. To be honest, I'm really not sure how they're going to go about it. If I'm correct, there's a part in the new labor law that's, states that the minimum wage can be reviewed every 2 or every 3 years. So I don't know whether it's likely that any review would be done. I'm considering how long it took to even get to the point where the 70,000 was approved. I wonder how long it will take to do any review if the federal government is even willing. So when we look at exactly. So when we look at things like this, I just wonder if Labour itself is even prepared to fight this fight, that they're trying to, start, or let me not call it a fight, let me call it a discussion or whatever it is that we want to call it. So what I think, or what I believe, is that Labour should go back and get their acts together, and be more credible. A lot of people do not, believe in the power of Labour to defend workers' rights. If Labour comes out today and says, oh, let's go on a strike for this or that, nobody's going to listen. Nobody believes that Labour is fighting for workers' rights, or most people don't believe that Labour is fighting for workers' rights. So that credibility issue already exists. Now, but the reality is clear, though. 70,000 is inadequate. We look at what petrol prices are saying now. Petrol prices influence a lot of activities, transportation, feeding, house rent, all of those things, education, healthcare. Things have gone up, so in reality, 70,000 is inadequate, for workers. And to be honest, I'm not quite sure how we're going to get there. Now, some states, or even the governments, will argue and say, oh, we are not making enough money, revenues are low, we can't increase, blah, blah, blah. But one thing we always say is that there are areas where you can divert funds from. There are areas where, for example, we see funds being allocated to things that don't bring results. For example, lots of foreign travel, where we don't see any immediate or even potential future results. We hear about expenses being made on things that are not directly relevant to the people, security budgets and votes, and we still have all the security issues. I believe that if the various governments sit down, and look at their expenses, and try to rework where the money goes, they will find money to be able to at least do some increments in wages.
All right, Mr. C, I could see that look in your eye. I suspect you want to chip in a word or two before we move on to our next story and some messages.
Okay. So I've never been impressed with the quality of the present Labour leadership, and I'm still not impressed. So all we've gotten are complaints that 70,000 isn't sufficient today to deal with life's issues, right? In all of the news, right? Nobody's quoted another figure. They're not telling us, okay, since 70,000 no longer cuts it, X or Y or even Z will now cut it. Now, true, like Gbubemi rightly said, at the time they were negotiating this nonsense called 70,000, it was made crystal clear to them that it wouldn't scratch the surface. They couldn't be bothered. They went on and agreed. Why are you now complaining? And then more importantly, where do they expect the increase now to come from? Because now we're even worse off than we were 2 years ago. So where is this magical salary increase going to appear from? From what account? Remember that crude oil prices are down.
True.
So this makes no sense, really and truly. So it's like a little boy, his father is a civil servant, they live in Yaba or Bagada, and he says, no, Daddy, I want you to buy a house in Banana Island. How's that going to happen?
Miracles do happen.
Okay.
That's all I can say. Let me take a message or two before I come back to you, Mr. C, on this one. This is Ade in Lagos. He says, master strategies or strategist, subsidy is gone, economic disaster, the nation is now a gangster paradise, highest out of school children in the world, poverty capital of the world, more than 7.2 million private and public companies shut down, no infrastructure, no development, and so on and so forth. Master strategists that cannot attend debates. I will not say that next one. Compromise on institutions and so on and so forth. I think you're on a mission to get me in trouble here, but I get the gist of your message, and I've tried my best to put it all together. But thank you for sending that in. We'll be watching you very carefully, Adi. You tried to get me in trouble, Adi. No worries, no worries. We did together. King Joe says, Mr. C, I disagree with you on the election fraud. Mr. Akpabio is not at fault. It's not faulty or at fault. It's like someone identified you as chief judge instead of a lawyer behind your back. Will you be punished for that? How? King Joe, I think you're comparing apples and yams, not even apples and oranges. I don't think your analogy is the same thing with what has happened here.
No, the court was clear. He rigged it in favor of Mr. Akpabio. That is the finding of court. So I'm not sure what the listener or the commenter is talking about. I'm referring to a finding of the court.
I'm thinking what King Joe is saying is what could have happened is the professor did that, but without the knowledge of Mr. Akpabio in question.
Wow.
That's what I assume.
We're not 5-year-olds here. We're not 5-year-olds here. Thank you.
All right, Mr. C, do you want to talk about Fubara and Wiki, or do you want to talk about CBEX? Because right now I'm down.
No, give me 5 minutes. I'll wrap up the two of them. Give me 5 minutes. There's not a lot to say about the second story. Even the first one, there's not a lot to say. So let's take CBEX, right? There's a song tearing up the airwaves now, and the first two lines go somewhere along the lines of desperados and that there are many, many. Good. Now, despite everything that has happened, Nigerians have returned to CBEX. And when I was on the show last with you, Ayo, I said they would return, and it has come to pass. They are being told now that the company is no longer registered in Canada. It's now registered in the UK. that the UK government is investigating it and that the insurance company is ready to pay. Two, that they didn't lose 1.3 trillion, they lost 126 billion, according to the promoters. Then in the very next breath, they say no, all the funds are intact. They then say that the fault was because it was AI trading and that now human beings will trade themselves and you can collect your referral bonuses immediately. And that by the 25th of August, whatever amounts you had before, you would collect them in bits, provided you've paid your verification fee, and that they are determined to show that they're not illegal or fraudulent. Now, some Nigerians, being ever desperate with very high risk appetites, have flooded back. And this return of CBEX will be far more dangerous than the first coming, because now they're going to wipe out everyone. Because some Nigerians believe that now that they are back, they can cash out quickly and run. That is the impression everyone has.
But Mr. C,
Nobody's going to cash it.
what exactly should the regulators be doing? The SEC and so on and so
No,
forth.
no,
Can
no.
they do anything about this?
No. Regulators should not do anything. No, sorry. They should mind their business, go about their duties. If you are so desperate and greedy and criminally minded and you lose money this time, don't disturb anybody. Don't. Simple. Do not disturb anybody. They know what they're doing. They want to reap where they have not sown. In 30 days, you will get 100% profit on your investment. Ayo, what sort of business, illegal or legal, on the face of this planet generates that sort of return? None, including drug trafficking. None. Absolutely none. So the regulators should just ignore them. And that is the truth. If I were the head of SEC and you come to me, I will not treat your petition because you are not a serious human being.
All right, Gbubemi, I'll come back to you, Mr. C, to talk about the wiki story, but
Okay.
let me go back to Gbubemi and talk about this particular story coming out of the Daily Trust newspaper. Now, it says that the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, says it is racing against time to ensure that all the impediments that have hindered credible, free, and fair elections in Nigeria are resolved before the 2027 general elections. Now, part of the moves it's proposing are amendments to Nigeria's electoral framework that would strip the president of the power to appoint the resident electoral commissioners, as the RECs or the RECs. Now, Professor Mohammed Kuna, the special advisor to INEC chairman, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, said this in a presentation at the ongoing retreat with the Joint Committee of the National Assembly on Electoral Matters on the reform of the electoral legal framework in Lagos. Let's get your thoughts on this particular issue.
Okay, so as we all know, INEC has the power to conduct elections, prepare for conduct elections, announce results for all of the elections in the country. I think all of the federal elections, because I think the states, all of the federal and gubernatorial elections, rather, the states are responsible for the local government elections. And a lot of people have always had issues with the INEC. Let me start from that first story. So what they're saying is that they are seeking to make some amendments to the electoral laws to be able to enhance their independence, on the assumption that a more independent INEC will produce, more free and fair elections. One of the things that they've said is that they're seeking to strip the president of the power of the appointments of the power to appoint resident electoral commissioners, and rather INEC would have that responsibility, and then they would call them state directors of education or something like that. If you recall, I think it was during President Buhari's period, there was a time that he appointed somebody as a resident electoral commissioner, somebody who was a card-carrying member of a political party. Now, ideally, these resident electoral commissioners are supposed to be neutral and not be aligned to any party. So that's just one of the potential risks that I believe that INEC is seeking to avoid. What they're also trying to do is to introduce a digital version of the voters card. So rather than having to have a permanent PVC, we're able to download our voters' cards, which should, enhance opportunities for people to vote rather than a situation where people are going to queue to pick up cards and all of that. Now, all of there are a few other, things that they're seeking to do, and all of these things are good on paper. But in reality, I wonder, if INEC is prepared for many of these things that they're seeking to push for. Is INEC truly independent under the circumstances? When we even look at things like funding, for example, and funding dictates independence to a large,
Extent.
extent. When we look at the voting itself, we look at the last elections where there was all of the problems with all of the beavers and uploading to the clouds and this and that and all of that. Yes, reforms are very key, very important. It's 2025. We're going to have another round of federal elections or national elections in 2027, which is less than 2 years from now. I'm not sure how much time they have to be able to seek and push these reforms. Also considering that all of these proposed reforms will have to go through a National Assembly. That, in my opinion, I'm not quite confident about if we look at the antics of the Senate and the Federal House of Representatives, who I believe, in my opinion, and this is a personal opinion, are not necessarily out to represent the people that they've been put out to represent. Well, let's see what comes out of this, to be honest. I'm not holding my
breath. Like on many things, we're not holding our breath. Mr. C, you want to chip in before you quickly just summarize the weekend Fubara situation for us?
Okay, so very quickly, the National Assembly is not going to pass any amendments that strips the president of appointing regs. It's not happening. Now, to the Fubara and Wike saga, Nigerian politicians will eternally disgrace you. They will eternally stain your whites. Can Fubara explain to anyone why he's begging Wike and what he's begging him for? To the extent that the report suggests he was prostrating on the floor, holding his legs and shouting, "My leader." What is that about? And sadly, that is what Rivers State has been saddled with for 2 years and will be saddled with for another 2 years. So this is a call to ordinary Nigerians, reasonable Nigerians, logical Nigerians. If you don't do the right things at the right time, this is the sort of nonsense you'll be presented with on a regular basis. Now, in all of this, the interest of the average Rivers resident is not being factored in or considered. This is factoring in personal interests between two highly placed individuals. And you see it replicated across the states, most of the states. So there's no news here. Of course, they're going to embarrass him further publicly. But ultimately, if the apology is accepted, as I believe it would be, given that the president is favorably disposed to him returning to office, clearly under certain conditions, it's a wrap. But really and truly, are these the sort of people who should occupy public office? These are questions we need to ponder on in our quiet moments everywhere we are.
Yes, indeed. All right, let me take your messages really quickly as we wrap up on the conversation. Femi in Ogba says, morning, guys. Morning to you too, Femi. The professor was jailed for his part in the rigging of 2019 election and not 2023 election. Yes, we did say 2019. He was jailed in 2021. We just made reference to his election, to his run in 2023. But yes, we did allude to the 2019 elections there, Femi. Let me take some more here. Ajayi Olonilowa says, the conviction of that professor for election rigging is a complete disgrace to Nigeria's academic community. It's a wonder that those that should be the beacon of our development are being manipulated by half-literate politicians to rig elections for them. Who will save this country? Well, Ajayi, if you ask me, who then will I ask? This is Tony Marine Beach. He says, it's becoming clear that the judiciary are hand in gloves with the political class in electoral fraud. Abiola was recognized as winner after all the confessions and books as the valid winner of election, and a motion was moved in the Senate for the recognition of, no, it wasn't Morrissey, it was Humphrey Nwosu, not Morrissey, who stood for truth in the face of the military, and it was shouted down. The reason is simple. These politicians hate to promote anything about honesty in the electoral process and wouldn't set a model for emulation. Are we really talking about democracy in this country? Questions, questions, questions. Cisco Delgado says, God bless you real good, Mr. C. Those guys are very greedy. That's the CBEX people. Jerry says, um, please, let's avoid calling the name of this INEC man. His name is causing serious anger in my mind. Honestly, should tell us what he did with the over 400 billion he was given for a free and fair election. Please, what happened to the student union that used to rise up to challenge the government of the day and lead protests? Jerry, we're living in 2025. Didn't you get the memo? Barrister Danukuda says, in a saner climb, Akpabio should have resigned by now, given the outcome of Professor Ogbon's conviction. There was a country, indeed, indeed. And Joseph Meunier says, it's really unfortunate the height of shenanigans and impunity in the country today. How the law works and is implemented. Just imagine how a professor rigs an election, is in jail, but the beneficiary is now the Senate president. Also today is the FCC's failure to arrest the Okoya children who allegedly abused the Naira with video evidence of the crime. A few days ago, a socialite E-Money was arrested for the same crime of the abuse of Naira. God bless Nigeria. Indeed, Joseph, God bless Nigeria. All right, it's a wrap on Freshly Pressed this morning. Thank you for all your messages and always keeping it tuned, even on a holiday. And thank you, Mr. C and Gbubemi, for joining me to analyze and give perspective.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for having me in Lagos. Enjoy the holiday and let's get ready for the weekend.
Indeed, let's get ready for the weekend. I mean, tomorrow can be added on, as an appendage to today. Some people can, but I'll be here keeping it locked with you on Smooth 98.1. Don't go anywhere. 8:15, we'll take a walk into the grapevine, all about entertainment and all the good stuff. Don't go anywhere.